Yes, I know. Yes, Jack. Oh, mind your language. There might be small people listening to this. No, I don't mean brownies, you idiot. No, human children. Yes. Oh, but I forgot they can't hear you, can they? No, of course they can't. Because you see, humans, you can't hear people from the fairy world and the world beyond except for one night of the year. Yes, on Halloween. On Hallows Eve, when the veil between the living and the dead and the fairy and the human becomes so thin, they almost cross over each other. Yes, that is why the 31st of October is such a special occasion, and so is the 1st of November. Anyway, lots of boys and girls have sent in their stories this year, so me and Jack here are going to read a few of them to you. One of you's even sent in a poem. Anyway, you will find that out later on, because we're doing these in episodes. Yes, that means we do one story at a time. Yes, not all of them together, one story at a time. And if you want to see them, you have to go onto the interweb. Let's start with our first one, and today we have one by a little girl called Evelyn McCall. Evil! Oh, what a great name, Evelyn! I wonder if her story is evil. Right, let's find out, shall we? Yes, you're quite right. Are you ready? Are you sitting most comfortably? Good. This is called Halloween Dance Party. The Halloween Dance Party. Did you get a message for the Panopticon Halloween party? Naomi's voice burst through the telephone. I did, replied Lisa, holding the phone a good 10 centimetres away from her face. She had only read the email half an hour ago. Are you going? Absolutely. Although I don't know who I'll dress up yet. It's a silver screen party, so maybe Betty Davis or something. You should bring Tam. It'll be fun. Lisa doubted Tam would be up for it, but hey-ho, she'd have to drag him. The Halloween party was 2 weeks away. Naomi and Lisa desperately thought of outfits as they skimmed through vintage Hollywood magazines for inspiration. Naomi and Lisa spent hours searching every charity shop, rummaging through musty-old boxes for suitable offcuts and digging through heaps of clothes until their bones ached. Alas, their search was unsuccessful and they slumped in a cafe defeated. Maybe we shouldn't bother, Naomi pouted. Watching the steam swell from the pumpkin spice lattes, Lisa thought of her great aunt Meg. There was a photograph of her dancing at the Cotton Club, all feathers and sequins. What if she could dress like her? Then she snapped her fingers. She suddenly remembered the box. She used to love that box when she was a bairn. All hope was not lost. She gasped and tugged at Naomi's sweater. Would you like to visit my Aunt Molly with me? She has lots of 20s style clothes stashed in her back room. Keeps a hoard of them. Naomi blinked. How come she has 20s clothes? My great aunt Meg went to America in the early 1920s, worked in high-class fashion shops in New York, went to all the clubs and everything. Adrenaline shot through her and the words came splattering out of her mouth. Before she passed, my Aunt Molly was her carer. Yes, told her many stories. I know there's a trunk full of clothes kept in Meg's old bedroom. My aunt kept everything. They don't have any weird smells, do they? Naomi asked. Define weird. You know, decay. Nah, don't worry about that. We can Febreze them. I wish I could Febreze you sometimes, Jack. Anyway, later that evening, the sky turned ashen grey and the rain battered against the window panes. Lisa flung on a thick knit cardigan and cross-legged on the armchair, sinking into the velvet cushions and telephoned her Aunt Molly to arrange a visit. Her aunt's croaky voice sounded far away and lukewarm. Why the unfriendly attitude? It was strange. She hadn't seen her in months, maybe years, so she'd expected a bit more enthusiastic response. Elderly downside, Lisa thought as she twisted her fingers around the cord. Nevertheless, her aunt begrudgingly agreed and told her to come whenever she wanted. A few days later, Lisa and Naomi drove the short distance to Aunt Molly's house. The rain had cleared, but the country roads were blotted with muddy puddles and slick with russet leaves. When the house came into view, Naomi let out an audible gasp. The old stone cottage was almost hidden under a tangle of red ivy, and from the windows, spider webs strung from one end to another. On the upstairs window lodged a solitary crow, cawed shrilly as it tapped the grimy window with its beak, desperate to enter. Lisa had forgotten her aunt's reclusive nature. But was this always this bad? Aunt Molly took ages to creak open the heavy oak door. Her dark eyes stared unblinkingly at the two girls. "Come in," she said with a tight smile. She was a tiny woman with unruly grey hair that sat upon her head like a nest of silver twine. Between her close, beady eyes, a shining nose sloped to a sharp point. The sleeve of her ill-fitted black clothes fell to her shoulders as a thin, veiny arm beckoned them in sight. I think I'm related to this woman, you know. Pretty sure I am now I think about it. Anyway, Lisa hid her shock with an overly wide smile. Surely she hadn't looked this grim the last time she was here. When was the last time? Naomi leaned into her ear and whispered, "Does Miss Havisham know we're here for the clothes?" Inside, the house was as cold as a crypt. Aunt Molly flitted around the rooms, mumbling and hissing at the birds that had let themselves in. She grabbed a crooked old broom from beside the pantry and swatted them away. "Would you care for some tea? I've got some pot brewing," she said. Her voice lacked any warmth that traditionally should come with an invitation to tea. Lisa choked and "No, thank you." This place was creepy. The quicker they were out, the better. "So, how are you?" Aunt Molly chuckled. "Don't bother with the formalities. Just see yourselves over to the trunk. That thing's not budged in years. That's why you come, isn't it?" The tentative walk towards Great Aunt Meg's room at the end of the gloomy corridor was painful. The corridor stretched for eternity. Did her Aunt Meg not want them here? Lisa's stomach ruptured with guilt. Maybe she shouldn't have come. "It's open," Naomi whispered, a cold mist escaping her trembling lips. They didn't barge in right away. Instead, they gathered up a bit of courage, daring one another to go first. Being her idea and technically being family to the deceased, Lisa stepped closer to the enormous door that loomed over them, took a deep breath and cracked it open. The room was just as she remembered, dingy and dank, with a heavy odour of mildew, yet was weirdly cosy. Sounds like my own house. With a large canopied bed where the curtains, which would have once been pink, were more like the colour of rotten peaches. The dressing table was cluttered with the same glass perfume bottles that, whenever the sun came through the window, would bounce the light around in a kaleidoscope of colours. Nice. Pinned Pinned to the mirror were faded photographs. There were pictures taken at the beach, some at fancy parties, and pinned at the top was a professional portrait of Meg, her dark, sparkling hair curled tight around her face. Lisa sighed. She didn't get any of her looks. No, Lisa was a plain girl. Plain girl, yes, not like myself, no. Is that the box? Naomi lunged at the wooden trunk at the end of the bed. Oh, it's locked. Lisa smiled. It was always locked. She pulled open the first drawer of the dressing room table, and there, amongst the buttons and spools of thread, was the iron key in its usual place. Once she unlocked the trunk, the girls heaved it open together. Rivers of silk, taffeta and sequins came pouring out, eager to escape the confines of the trunk. It's so pretty, Naomi squealed, dragging a rope of pearls over her arms. Everything was perfect and beautiful. What a shame they've been hidden from the world. With great care, they sifted through the trove, examining every item of clothing and every piece of jewellery, keeping an eye on the time. It would be a nightmare driving home. These roads were pitch black. Oh, they'd never get back home. Emerald green or black, emerald green or black, emerald green or black. Lisa was undecided about which of these two dresses to choose. However, Naomi was more decisive, taking first dibs on the red beaded dress, which looked a size too small, but that didn't bother her. This would be very devilish, right? She held the dress against her and swished side to side. Wait until Sydney sees this. I think I'll go with the black, Lisa said. No, maybe the green. Oh, I don't know. I can't choose one. The black one, Naomi said. Look at the embroidery on it. Besides, you can wear it with this. She put down the red dress, dipped her hands into the trunk, and held out a golden shawl. Yes, perfect, Lisa thought. It's just like the one Meg was wearing in some of the photographs. Just as she was about to take it, the door creaked open and every muscle stiffened. They snapped their heads towards the door, half expecting a skeletal frame of Aunt Molly to be standing like a ghostly apparition. But there was no one there. Not a soul. All they saw was the gloom of the corridor. Let's get out of here, Lisa groaned. Rushing to leave, they folded their outfits and bundled them into tote bags. Still reeling with panic, Lisa did notice Aunt Molly by the front door and crashed right into her. Molly stood firm, which was a surprise. She was so thin, it would seem like it would take her nothing to knock her over but a heavy sigh. Sorry, Aunt Molly. Just want to head out before the darkness comes. She cut in with a voice sharp as a blade. Do be careful with these garments. They haven't left the house in decades. When Lisa reached the car, she turned her head towards the doorway, hoping Aunt Molly would wave them off, but she wasn't there. Halloween had arrived in the blink of an eye. Naomi and Lisa kept their outfits a secret from their boyfriends, who were still frustratingly undecided about dressing up at all. As they rattled towards town in the back of a black hack, giggling zombies, ghosts, vampires and superheroes swarmed the streets as youngsters went guising around the suburbs. Carved pumpkins grinned from decorated doorways, their candlelit eyes following them closely. Yes, relatives of yours probably, Jack. The town wasn't much quieter. Drunken devils and witches bounced around the clubs, their cackling voices mingling into the night. But as they slipped out of a taxi, Careful not to tear any of the sequins, they stood in a dark lane outside the Panopticon as a cold wind rushed by them, and somehow they felt very far away from everything. The streets were too quiet, too quiet. Where was everyone? They arrived an hour early, but still expected to find a queue, or at least some people loitering around. It's cold, Naomi moaned with chattering teeth. I hope we don't have to wait too long. The boys won't be here for another hour. Lisa looked up. A full blue moon was bright against the sky, gilding the Panopticon with silvery light. Through the stillness, a jazzy tune escaped the building, squeezing out of the seams as if it were overflowing. It swooped and rose, bellowed and looped, spinning them in a full circle. Lisa and Naomi glanced at each other in disbelief. It started? Lisa wondered, feeling a little light-headed. What was the harm in going in now? Luckily the door was unlocked, and so they crept up the stairs, following the music, and as soon as they entered the auditorium, they were met by a thunderous roar. It was crammed full of folk, dressed to the nines. The air was bursting with a wild variety of sounds, music, chatter, the rumble of laughter, the popping of corks, and the fizz of champagne. It's like a speakeasy, Naomi said with awe. How magical, Lisa gasped, her eyes wide open, captivated by the razzle-dazzle. The auditorium wasn't grand nor luxurious, but it was vibrant and pulsing with history. On the stage was a jazz band. A wooden balcony curved around the hall, and Lisa could see more guests lounging on the upper seats. As she stood in a daze, a hand snatched her wrist, and she was pulled into the crowd, into a whirl of faces. Can't you dance? A blonde bombshell dressed in silver fluttered her long eyelashes. She puckered up her red bow lips. Just watch me, won't ya? She stepped back and the crowd moved to surround her. She counted down to 3 and danced. Her feet moved so fast that Lisa couldn't possibly catch all of it. Ain't the music swell? I wasn't born an actress, you know. Not that anyone was paying attention. Naomi tapped her shoulder. Do you know who that is? She said. She looked familiar. Jean Harlow! That's Jean Harlow! So it is. But how? She's dead. Was this a dream? Pinch me, Lisa said, and Naomi obliged. Ouch, that hurt. But they were still of the party, surrounded by glamour. Maybe they're students from the conservatoire. Aye, that must be it. Damn, they look so like them. Lisa skimmed her eyes across the glowing faces. Jean Harlow was not the only costume she recognised. Nearby, swaying under the pin lights, was Josephine Baker with a bright, contagious smile. Everyone here was the perfect doppelganger. A dashing man in a purple satin matador outfit, adorned with glittering beads and silver buttons, came sauntering towards them. He bowed his head like a prince and offered a rose to Naomi, which she eagerly took. She turned towards Lisa and drew in a deep breath. Oh my God, it's Rudolph Valentino. You're Valentino, aren't you? Naomi stammered. The man tilted his head and combed his fingers through his black hair. I am beginning to look more and more like my miserable imitators, but I can assure you I am the real Valentino. Care to dance? Naomi hesitated. Don't worry, Chief, it'll be all right. She slipped the stem of the rose through her hair and swooned, and within seconds they were dancing, lost in the sea of old Hollywood revelers. Lisa weaved her way through the crowds, tapping away to the jazzy music. The heels were killing her, and so she sat by a small round table, cluttered with half-empty shoots of champagne. She leaned down and whipped her heels off, giving her feet a quick massage. If only she had bought her trainers. Then someone stood beside her, and she stared up at a pair of baggy trousers. "You'll never find rainbows if you're looking down," came the soft English voice. Lisa lifted her head and saw Charlie Chaplin, his little square moustache twitching away. The dancing, the music, the laughter, it all became a blur of magical revelry. They lost track of time. How long had they been here? Where were Tam and Sydney? Lisa crossed her arms. I bet they got cold feet about the whole thing. Typical. Isn't this wonderful? Look at what the boys are missing. Naomi soon found her again, and they stood for a while by a red pillar, out of breath, guessing who everyone was meant to be. Clara Bow, John Barrymore, Gloria Swanson, Marlena Dietrich, Anna May Wong, Douglas Fairbanks, Fatty Arbuckle, Theda Barra, Joan Crawford. There were hundreds of them. Most of them didn't know, but they all looked their bee's knees. A garbling trumpet bellowed into the night, and as the guests continued to dance, silver and gold balloons came tumbling down from the balcony, along with strings of tinsel that fell onto their shoulders. Colourful lights rotated across the ceiling, and they wondered if that signalled the end was near. We should head out soon. The taxi stand will be heaving, Lisa said, although neither of them could make the first move towards the exit. How could they leave this? By the doorway, two funny-looking men dressed in unison, each matching the other's movements like a mirror, but they couldn't have looked more different from one another. One was tall and chubby with a little moustache, and the other was small, thin and dopey. As they approached the exit, both of them said, "Be happy, stay happy, and be yourself." It was Laurel and Hardy. Lisa was certain of it. They didn't want to go, and the moment they stepped over the threshold, a great weight of sadness crushed them both. "Will this be back again?" Naomi asked with a sniff. Lisa held onto the railings as they clambered down the stairs. "I hope so," she said. But she had a feeling that would be their last night. At the lobby, a gust of wind threw open the doors, and they hurled themselves outside. They stood in the darkened lane, speechless. It was quiet. When had the music stopped playing? "Hey, it's Sydney and there's Tam." Naomi waved to two guys teetering away from the music hall. They stopped and turned, and sure enough it was them. But why are they leaving? Shame about the party, but it's a bit silly of the organisers to cancel last minute, Sydney said. They were dressed in pinstripe suits with thin moustaches drawn haphazardly above their lips. "What do you mean?" Lisa said. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Tam pointed towards the door. Strapped to the front was a sign notifying any guests that the Halloween party had been cancelled due to technical issues. Party's off. "Guess we'll just head home and watch horror films," Sydney said with a shrug that suggests he wasn't all that bothered about missing the event. "Cancelled? How could it have been cancelled? They were just there, dancing with all the bygone stars." Lisa and Naomi looked back into the stairway. There were no lights, no music. Everything was in darkness. Was any of that real? Then, under the pale blue moonlight, Lisa caught something shimmering on Naomi's hair. It was the red rose entangled in silver tinsel. Gently, she wriggled it off. They gave each other a knowing look. Let's go see Aunt Molly, Lisa said, and Naomi eagerly agreed. The end. Don't you just love the references to the Panopticon? It is a spooky old building, you know, full of ghosts. 12 months of the year, not just at Halloween, so don't forget. And thank you, little Evelyn, for sending in that story. Thank you. See you next time.